Joining us now, also in the studio, Representative Hank Zuber. He represents District 113. That's Jackson County. He chairs the Banking and Financial Services Committee. Good morning, Representative Zuber. Good to have you in the studio here.
Gerard, good morning and Happy New Year's to you and your listening audience. And just, if I may, just one point of clarification. The Speaker changed me about mid-session last year from banking to insurance.
Okay. I apologize for that. My notes had you down in the banking, so glad to know about that. What you got cooking, I guess, in this 2022 session? It promises to be a busy one.
Well, Gerard, let me start off from the big picture. And I listen to your program, I listen to Paul's program, and everybody wants to talk about legislation.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to talk about bills. The only way we can solve issues today and problems today is through legislation. I don't think that should be the case. I think we need to start focusing on how do we decrease the size of government? Mm-hmm. How do we make government more responsive to the people? How do we make government more effective to the people and the citizens of Mississippi? And something that I've been thinking about, and this is right up your alley, Gerard, is, the Department of Defense just contracted with Amazon Cloud Services to do all of their cloud computing, as you know. Mm-hmm. We need somebody like that to come here and take a look at state government, county government, and local government from top to bottom and say, hey, this is the flow chart. This is where you have repetition. This is where you have duplicative services and programs. And one case in point is, and it just drives me nuts, is that every state agency, every different county, every different city has its own information technology program and department and their own software. And there's not a lot of interaction, or a lack, if it's almost impossible to have interaction between those agencies and those different layers of government.
Interesting. Well, that's something when I was in business was personally pushing for going back 20 years when we first launched our data center in the Jackson State East Center, and we saw the possibility and the prospect of combining resources. So what happens is you get just as you said, every individual, let's take the counties. We have 82 counties. Most of what they need from an IT perspective is equal, is the same. There are some nuances in the counties based on county laws, county regulations, and so forth. But for the most part, the core systems are pretty much identical across the county landscape. And so it clearly makes sense for them to look at an infrastructure and a model where they would share in those common systems, and the advent and the reliability and plausibility of cloud consumption models makes total sense there. We started talking about that 20 years ago. But as you said, it's like 82 islands. And it's people, overhead of people in every single county responsible for managing those systems and operating those systems. It is incredibly duplicative in terms of people and money. I totally agree with you. Breaking through those fiefdoms in those counties is the difficulty, as you know.
That's the hard part of it. And two examples that come to mind on a state level is that there's no interaction. You cannot have computerized communication between CPS, Child Protection Services, and let's just say the Department of Medicaid.
Yeah.
Which biological father is paying child support and which one's not, and how does that relate to Child Protection Services? I don't think you have the ability to communicate between the Department of Public Safety and the tax collectors in the counties to see who and who doesn't have insurance, automobile insurance.
Yeah.
And that's just two examples that come to mind, but it's multiplied by 100 on the state level and within each state agency.
Yeah, the county, municipal level, the state level, you're right. So those are more integration issues as opposed to just having this replicated infrastructure issue as well. The state did look very hard and very carefully at kind of a statewide contractor to provide not just cloud hosting and co-location services. I believe those agreements are in place, those contracts are in place, but look at contracting with a third party to deliver cloud services across the application landscape. The AWS contract with the Department of Defense has been highly contentious between them and Microsoft. It's been going on about 5 years. They call it JEDI, J-E-D-I, and I think that's finally getting resolved. But it's like a $10 billion contract.
Competition is good. I mean, I mentioned Amazon, but Microsoft and Elon
Oracle
Musk
was involved in it as well. So and it was wars between those gorillas, as I like to call them. But I applaud you. You're on the right track.
A lot of money at stake.
Yes, a lot of money at stake, and they got into the complexities of the RFP specifications and requirements. That's where the contention was, and so they awarded it, then they pulled it, revoked it, then they awarded it again. Yeah, I think you're on the right track, and I think there's some work that could be done there that would save the taxpayers money and make us more efficient, more responsive, as you said.
Well, I'm going to mention it to the speaker and just kind of see what he says about it, and it's time that we start this communication and the process to maybe get that done.
Yeah, all right, so good stuff. We got several other high-profile matters that you guys are dealing with. Tax reform is another one that passed the House last year. Of course, didn't get any traction in the Senate. There have been hearings since then. Where does that stand in your view right now?
I think it's going to pass the House, and we're going to send it to the Senate. Hopefully the Senate will pass it, and we can send it to the governor.
I saw Senator Fillingame filed a bill, or is planning to file a bill, that would cut or eliminate income taxes for all Mississippians over the age of 100. You heard about that?
I have not. He must have a very elderly population in his district.
I'm not sure where that came from, but I saw that this morning. And then yesterday, the Senate announces Senator DeBar in a fairly involved and extensive plan to raise teacher pay. They've stated in the press release coming from the Lieutenant Governor's office that average pay raise would be $4,700. I've looked at the tables and how that would work and play out. What does the House know about this at this point?
Oh, we'll have our own plan.
Okay.
Representative and the Chairman of Education, Richard Bennett, has been working diligently over the last several months, and we're going to come up with a very detailed and comprehensive plan that we will pass out of the House and also send to the Senate on teacher pay raise. Okay.
Well, I didn't know if you were familiar with any of the details of the plan itself, the specifications there, provisions. But it looks like an average pay raise of $4,700. The state would spend $210 million over a couple of years in doing that.
The Senate plan is over 2 years.
Yeah.
It's, I'm not sure about the specifics with the House plan, but it may even be higher.
Yeah. Of course, that's a permanent cost. I mean, even though they say 2 years, the fact is once you start raising pay, those are permanent adjustments. Those are recurring expenses. So those are embedded in the budget at that point.
Yeah, and don't forget about the insurance and the retirement benefits associated with the increase in pay.
18% roughly is what the taxpayers contribute to the PERS fund for state employees. I think the total contribution when you add the employee share is 28%. So it is an expensive program, is PERS, when you think about it. And plus, state employees also participate in Social Security and Medicare, and so there's an employer side of that is an expense to the state. But that's kind of a high-profile matter. All right, medical marijuana. What do you think is going to happen there?
I think it'll pass.
Pass in its present form as drafted in the House?
Well, what is the present form? It keeps changing.
That's right, it does.
It keeps changing overnight. We'll get it out of the House. Well, let me back up. I think you heard what the Speaker said.
Yeah.
We're going to wait on the Senate.
Yeah.
I think the Senate will pass something and send it to us, and we'll pass it. Probably, if I had to guess, and this is a little bit above my pay scale, we'll make some changes to it and send it back to the Senate.
Think the governor is ready to sign off on whatever comes out of that process?
Well, if we get the percentage of the content worked out, I hope so.
Yeah.
It's something that we need to do, and I mean, if for any other reason, Gerard, just get it past us so we can focus on other issues.
Yeah. I agree. It's taking up too much air. Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah. You got to get back? You want to hang around again?
I can hang around.
Okay, we got Representative Hank Zuber in the studio here on Midday. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We've got Representative Hank Zuber joining us today in the studio. So, all right, Representative Zuber, the Insurance Committee, which you have informed us, I appreciate you doing so, sir, that you now chair. What might be coming before you there? What about telemedicine?
Telemedicine.
Yeah.
Oh, telemedicine, yes. To answer your question, that will be coming. That will be one of the first pieces of legislation that we take up in the Insurance Committee. And, you know, there were some statements that were made last year, you know, about who was responsible for not passing the telemedicine bill. Gerard, let me be very clear and very frank with your listening audience, and on behalf of the Mississippi House of Representatives. The charge that I gave to my committee and my vice chairman, Kevin Ford, who has worked nonstop
he has.
for the last year and a half, is that Mississippi needs telemedicine. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah.
However, we're going to do it in a way that it is in the best interest of the patients and the citizens of Mississippi.
Sure.
And quite frankly, I don't give a damn about the special interests, who's on this side and who's on that side. We're going to do what's in the best interest of the patients.
Well, that's great to hear, and I appreciate that underlying your approach. To date, I think it's fair to say that UMMC has had a bit of an advantage in that respect. Are you familiar with that? Do you think so?
Well, to a certain degree. I mean, they have their own network, telemedicine network.
Yeah, we were involved in building that, my company, by the way.
Well, congratulations.
Long time ago.
Is there anything your company hasn't done?
Oh, yeah, there's plenty. But, I mean, you're just touching on things that we happen to have some, our core business.
That we need to implement within state government.
Yeah.
So, anyways, it's, you know, and whenever I say we're going to do what's in the best interest of the patients, you know, that means maybe letting the commissioner promulgate a lot of rules and regulations concerning audio only. You know, you've got to have, Gerard, you got to have some limitations on audio only.
Yeah.
You can't just have providers, you know, providing treatment on a monthly basis, annual basis, with no limitations whatsoever, just through audio means.
What do the providers say about that? What is their position?
I think most of them have come around and agree that at some point you need to see the patient.
Sure. And there's all kinds of technology in addition to just the video exchange. There are devices now that can be included in that encounter, in that interaction for diagnostics, et cetera. And there are a whole lot more on the board. I mean, this is definitely a wave of in the delivery of health care. And I've always thought, Representative, that the way to curb the cost of health care is with innovation in the delivery and consumption of care. There's a lot of, and I know you chair the Insurance Committee, there's a lot of focus on what can we do about these insurers. But the way to curb the cost is in the delivery and consumption of healthcare.
I would agree with you. I think we need to add two other components or factors to that analysis, Gerard. Number one would be transparency, and number three, or the second or the third one, would be competition.
Okay. And so what do you mean by that? What are you saying with respect to competition? Have more competition between just your typical doctors back home. Sure. Okay.
You know, I mean,
gotcha.
Yeah, just basic, simple competition and more disclosure of the billing process and the charges.
Agree.
In a way where the layperson can understand it, and the layperson is involved between the provider and who pays the money.
It's crazy complicated. I mean, you get these bills and statements and documents in the mail, and you say, what the heck does this mean? It really is ridiculously complicated. And what about the CON laws? I know that's not, I guess, part of the purview of your Insurance Committee, but the Certificate of Need laws that have been on the books of Mississippi for a long time, and I know many, including me, who have crusaded to tear these laws down, repeal them, to induce competition.
Tough subject. Are you advocating that position in terms of hospitals also, or
yes.
just everything?
I am.
Well, I don't want to get into too much detail, but
sure.
The hospitals, I mean, I would love to hear your argument as to the CON process and possibly repealing it as it relates to hospitals and the amount of money and capital expense. Once again, it gets back to competition.
Yeah.
But you've got to be. That's a little bit different, equation to solve. But overall, that needs to be looked at, especially with diagnostic machinery.
Yeah, an MRI. You got to get a certificate of need to buy an MRI, right?
Without question.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Imaging services. That's something that definitely needs to be looked at.
Increase capacity, add beds, and so forth. All those, I believe, require certificates of need as well. The Board of Health administers all of that and authorizes that. So certainly we can look at something to try to implement some degree of reform, maybe stop short of total repeal, which is what I'd like to see, but I would certainly welcome any reforms that would induce and increase competition.
At a minimum, that conversation needs to be started and brought back up. But and I don't know how much time I have, but if I may digress, we talk
about 4 minutes.
Thank you. We talk about everybody wants to pass legislation. Everybody wants to pass bills to solve issues and problems. And I mentioned to you about the cloud computing and the review that we need to do. Secondly, just in my personal and humble opinion, the best thing that we could do for this state and the citizens and to have a better process and a better legislative product, Gerard, is to limit the restriction of general legislation to every other year.
I'm for it.
That would have just imagine the benefits and the better work product that you would have.
So biennial sessions, is that what you mean by that?
You can have biannual sessions. I mean, we would still come back up. You'd still do the appropriation process.
Okay.
You'd still do bonds if you needed to, or maybe have a mechanism in place where an emergency comes up. You could do general legislation. Yeah. But you've got a handful of states that still do it. And let's not forget, that's the way it was done in Mississippi and in the majority of the states up until the late 60s, early 70s.
Okay.
And then Medicaid got passed, and the state legislature said, well, we need to come back every year, and this is a very detailed and complicated subject that we need to stay on top of. So that instead of every other year, we need to come back and look at that every year.
But as it stands right now, we convene every year and we drop 3,000 bills, right?
If not more.
If not more.
There is. Look, I've been at this a long time, my friend, a long time, and I have never seen one bill, in my political career that was so important that it had to pass ASAP.
I think that's right. I agree with you.
And we pass a lot of stuff over the years that's maybe, that is in response to a problem that is present and existing now, but will not exist and will not be present tomorrow.
Agree with that.
Along with the fact that we can have more time to research, debate, question, and answer, it will allow a better legislative product.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then, we always get into this point right at the end of the session, like last day or so, where we have these crazy bills where everybody starts throwing all their pork in it as well to get the funding mechanisms out. And it just seems like it kind of happens, and I'm not saying it does, in the dark of night or in the back rooms, however you want to describe it. That doesn't seem like the way to run a railroad. I agree with you. So
it would benefit, Gerard, it would benefit the whole process.
I agree.
It would benefit the legislative process. It would create a better work product. You'd have better legislation.
Yeah.
You would have less laws on the books. And again, it gets back to, the bottom line is, and we've talked about it a couple of times this morning, is that, bills, legislation, laws, they cannot solve every problem, every issue that we face.
Yeah, totally agree.
And in some cases, guess what? Passing legislation causes more
problems,
unintended consequences.
Seeing that out of Washington right now, big time. Is there broad support for this idea?
You know my experience.
Yes, sir.
You know my experience with campaign finance reform.
I do.
And traveling the state and how long it took to get to get campaign finance reform. It's the same uphill battle.
Okay.
But each year we make a little bit more progress.
You're promoting it. You're seeding
promoting it, and spreading the word and getting a lot of good feedback. So I may not be around, but eventually, hopefully, it will happen.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that's a great cause, and appreciate your efforts there. And of course, appreciate you coming on and your service and all about your ideas to try to streamline some of the information technology infrastructure in the state of Mississippi. I totally agree with that and applaud your efforts there.
It needs to be done. Thank you.
Absolutely. Representative Hank Zuber has been our guest here on Middays. We appreciate him coming in. Stay with us, folks. We got half an hour left in this hour of Middays.